On the night of our 5th wedding anniversary, I received a photo sent by my husband's secretary. In the picture, Shinja was sleeping on a hotel bed, covered with the cashmere coat I had personally put on him. The caption had only one sentence: "Sister-in-law, President Shin drank too much, he's at my place tonight." Faced with the secretary's provocation, I didn't cry or make a scene, nor did I confront him. I took a screenshot and posted it to the company workgroup, adding the most proper wish I could muster: "Congratulations to Secretary Liu on her successful rise, promoted to the president's wife." Then I moved out of the marital home, smashed the wedding photos, and with my own hands ended an 8-year marriage. Chapter 1. A cake, flowers, and red wine were set out on the table. I glanced at the time. 8 o'clock in the evening. On our 5th wedding anniversary, I waited at home for Ethan to come back. Candlelight flickered. I wore the dress Ethan had given me last year, the hem falling to my knees, the waist cinched just so. I rarely wore clothes like this. At the office I stuck to black, white, and gray, and I didn't even wear jewelry. The only exception was the wedding ring. I looked down at my finger. The ring was still there. But after tonight, I probably won't wear it anymore. The phone buzzed. Ethan's WeChat: "Something came up at the office, I'll be back later." I replied with a okay and set the phone aside. This wasn't the first time. When Xingshi Group was just starting out, we often worked until the early hours, sometimes not even having time to eat. Later, as the company grew and Ethan became CEO, there were more and more social engagements and he came home later and later. I understand. I'm a co-founder, I know how hard starting a business can be. At 9 o'clock, I relit the candle. At 10, my phone buzzed again. Not Ethan. It was a WeChat message from an unknown number. I opened it and saw a photo. In the photo, Ethan was sleeping on a hotel room bed, covered with a cashmere coat. I was the one who personally put that coat on Ethan. Last winter I told him it was warm and to take it with him on his business trip. Now, that coat is draped over another woman. Beneath the photo was a line of text: "Sister-in-law, Ethan drank too much, he's at my place tonight." I recognized that profile picture. Luna. Ethan's personal secretary. 24, big eyes, round little face, looked like the girl next door. I had seen her a few times. At the company annual party Luna stood beside Ethan, smiling sweetly, calling me sister-in-law. I stared at the photo. My finger glided lightly across the screen. I didn't cry. I didn't call to confront him. I didn't send any angry messages. I just took a screenshot of the photo, then opened a WeChat group. It was Xingshi Group's work group, nearly 1,000 people. I posted the screenshot and added one line: "Congratulations to Luna on her successful rise, promoted to president's wife." Sent. Then I turned off my phone. I stood up and looked at the candlelit dinner on the table. The cream on the cake had already begun to melt, and the flowers were wilting. I picked up the cake and dumped it straight into the trash. Then I went into the bedroom and started packing my luggage. I only took what belonged to me: clothes, books, work files, share certificates. I didn't take a single thing Ethan had given me. The suitcase filled up quickly. I dragged the case out of the bedroom and, passing through the living room, caught sight of the huge wedding photo on the wall. In the picture, Ethan and I were smiling so sweetly. It was taken 5 years ago, when we had just married. I stopped and stared at the photograph. 8 years. From falling in love at university, to building everything from scratch, to founding Xingshi Group, to getting married. I stood by him through the hardest days, accompanied him from a 20-square-meter rental to a riverside villa. Now, all of that is over. I picked up the photo frame, raised it above my head. Then I smashed it hard against the floor. The sound of glass shattering was especially harsh in the dead of night. The picture frame broke into pieces, the photo split too, just like our marriage. I didn't look back. I dragged my suitcase and walked out of the villa. My car was parked outside. I flung the suitcase into the trunk, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, the villa's lights were still on. It was the home I had decorated with my own hands. Every lamp, every painting, every piece of furniture had been my choice. Now, I was going to leave all of it behind. The car drove out of the villa district and merged into the night of X City. I rolled down the window. The night wind blew in, carrying the saltiness of the sea. X City is a coastal city, and in summer there is always a sea breeze. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a call from Ethan. I glanced at the screen and didn't answer. Ethan called again. I still didn't answer. The third time, Ethan sent a WeChat message. Elena, let me explain, it's not what you think. I glanced at it and didn't reply. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and focused on driving. Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of an apartment building. This was the apartment I bought before marriage. After we married, I had always rented it out and collected the rent. Now the tenant had just moved out, so I could move in. I hauled my suitcase up the stairs and opened the door. The apartment isn't large, 2 rooms and a living room, but it's enough for me to live in alone. I put my suitcase in the bedroom, then walked into the living room and opened the window. Outside the window was the night view of X City. Neon lights flickered, and traffic flowed like a river. I stood by the window, looking at the city I've lived in for 8 years. I remember 8 years ago, Ethan and I holding hands on the university campus. Back then we had nothing, only each other. Later we had a company, money, a villa, and a reputation. But we lost each other. I took a deep breath and closed the window. I lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. 8 years. I spent 8 years accompanying a man from having nothing to becoming worth billions. And then in 1 second, I ended it all. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a message in the work group. Someone asked in the group, "What's going on here?" Another person said, "Why isn't Ethan saying anything?" I didn't reply. I set the workgroup chat to do not disturb, then closed my eyes. There will be a lot to do tomorrow. Call a board meeting, deal with Luna, and divorce. I opened my eyes and looked at the night scene outside the window. The night view of X City was beautiful. Neon lights like colorful rivers flowed along the streets of the city. I stared at those lights and made a decision in my heart. Tomorrow, I would convene an emergency board meeting. As the second largest shareholder, I will make everyone who hurt me pay. As for Ethan, I shook my head. We can't go back. Chapter 2. I was awoken by my phone. I opened my eyes. It was already light outside. I was lying on the apartment sofa, the blanket kicked to the floor, and my phone was buzzing endlessly on the coffee table. I reached for the phone. The screen was full of notifications. WeChat, Weibo, news alerts. I opened Weibo and found myself trending. Trending number 1, wife of Xingshi Group CEO publicly accuses secretary of climbing the ladder. Trending number 3, Ethan's secretary Luna posts a response. Trending number 5, is the original wife of the wealthy clan vicious or is the secretary innocent? I opened Luna's Weibo. It was a long post, accompanied by photos of Luna crying with tear-streaked cheeks. I was only helping Mr. Ethan with business affairs. I never expected Elena to misunderstand. That night Mr. Ethan was truly drunk. I only escorted him back to his room. I'm willing to resign, but please, Elena, don't ruin my reputation. I'm a young woman fresh out of school, with no background, no support, I just want to work. The comments section had already exploded. This secretary is so pitiful, being bullied by the rich. The wife is just vicious, she posted it straight into the work group. How's that person supposed to live? Men fool around all the time, it's normal. Why make it everyone's business? After reading, she threw the phone aside. She stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. This is the power of public opinion. The truth doesn't matter, what matters is who appears more pitiable. Luna was clever, she knew how to manipulate public sentiment. After finishing the water, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan calling. I glanced at the screen and answered. Elena. Ethan's voice sounded weary. Why did you send that to the work group? Luna sent photos to provoke me. What do you think I should do? My voice was very calm. She's just my secretary. That night she helped me fend off drinks. I got drunk. Ethan said, if you do this, will the company lose its ability to reproduce? Ethan, do you think I'm making a scene? I'm not saying that. Your secretary sent photos to provoke me, captioned tonight at mine. Do you think that's normal? Elena, let me explain. No explanation needed. I cut him off. See you at the board meeting tomorrow. I hung up, tossed my phone onto the sofa. Then I went into the bathroom and washed my face. The reflection in the mirror had slightly reddened eyes, but I hadn't cried. I don't cry. Crying solves nothing. What I must do is strike back. The doorbell rang. I wiped my face, walked to the door, and peered through the peephole. It was Margaret. Ethan's mother. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Margaret stood in the doorway, her expression sullen. She wore a dark coat and held a handbag, looking as if she had rushed over from home. Margaret Elena. Luna. Luna is just a secretary, why are you going after her? Margaret's tone was sharp. Men fool around sometimes, that's normal. Why did you have to make it common knowledge? Fool around? I looked at Margaret. Mom, you think a man's affair is just fooling around? I'm not defending Ethan, but by doing this, you've really humiliated him. Margaret said, you're his wife, you should protect his reputation, not ruin him. Protect his reputation? I sneered, did he ever think about my reputation when he was cheating? You've got no proof. The photos are proof. I cut her off. Luna sent the photos to provoke me, captioned tonight at mine, isn't that enough? Margaret was silent for a moment, then said, Elena, for the sake of the family, you should endure it. Endure it? I looked at Margaret. Mom, what do you want me to endure? Endure his affair? Endure his secretary provoking me? Men will make mistakes, as long as they are willing to turn back. Ethan won't turn back. My voice was cold. He didn't even offer an explanation, and he expects me to just endure it. So what do you want to do? Margaret stood up. Divorce? Yes, divorce. If you dare to get a divorce, I'll make Ethan drive you out of the company. Margaret threatened, don't forget, Xingshi Group was founded by Ethan. I looked at Margaret and suddenly laughed. Mom, have you forgotten something? What? I am the co-founder of Xingshi Group and the second largest shareholder. My voice was calm, but my presence was undeniable. I hold 35% of the shares. I have the right to convene the board. Margaret froze. Xingshi Group was founded by Ethan and me, not by him alone. I continued, I stood by him from a 20-square-meter rental to a Riverview villa, from having nothing to owning billions. Do you think I have the right to stay in the company? Margaret's expression changed. As for the divorce, that's my decision, no one needs to agree to it. I said, you can have Ethan kick me out of the company, but I promise he will lose everything first. Margaret trembled with anger. Elena, you. Mom, I'm tired. I cut her off, please go home. Margaret looked at me, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she didn't speak. She grabbed her bag and slammed the door as she left. I stood in the doorway, listening to Margaret's footsteps fade down the corridor. Then I walked back to the living room, picked up my phone, and dialed Daniel. Hello, Elena? Daniel's voice came through. Daniel, help me look into Luna's background. I said, education, work history, bank accounts, check everything you can. Fine. Daniel said, I'll start right away. There's one more thing. What? Help me prepare the materials for an emergency board meeting. I said, tomorrow morning, I'm calling a board meeting. Daniel was silent for a moment. Elena, are you sure you want to do this? Understood. My voice was steady. I will make everyone know who truly owns Xingshi. All right, I'll be prepared. I hung up and set the phone aside. I walked to the window and looked out at the night view of X City. Tomorrow, I will convene the board. As the second largest shareholder, I will make Luna pay. As for Ethan, he's no longer worth my thoughts. The phone vibrated again. It was a WeChat message from Daniel. Elena, Luna's education and resume are dubious. Her prestigious diploma was bought, and her previous work experience is all fabricated. A small smile lifted at the corner of her mouth as she read the message. Just as expected. Luna was not an innocent woman. She had secrets. And I would unearth every one of them. Chapter 3. The Xingshi Group conference room was on the 28th floor. I arrived half an hour early. Wearing a dark suit, my long hair tied back, my face bare of makeup, yet my presence was formidable. Daniel stood beside me, holding a folder. Daniel said, the materials are all ready. Very well. I took the folder, opened it and glanced inside. Inside were Luna's diploma from a prestigious school, her resume verification, bank statements, and a few screenshots. Her degree from that elite school was bought online. Daniel said, spent 5,000 yuan. Her past employment at those companies is all fabricated, she never actually worked at any of them. Her bank account? There are issues. Daniel flipped to the last page. 3 months ago, 2 million suddenly appeared in her account. It was transferred in 4 times, 50,000 each time. Who transferred the money? I can't find it. They used an overseas account, routed through multiple transfers, very concealed. Looking at that bank statement, her brow knitted slightly. 2 million. How could a freshly graduated secretary possibly have 2 million? Unless someone bought her. Keep investigating. I said, I want to know who transferred that money to her. Daniel nodded. Okay. The conference room door opened. The board members filed in one after another. Xingshi Group's board has 7 people. Besides Ethan and me, there are 5 independent directors. They are prominent figures in the industry who rarely interfere in company affairs, but today they had to be present. Ethan came in last. He wore a gray suit and looked a little pale. He glanced at me as if to say something, but in the end, he remained silent. He walked to the chairman's seat and sat down. That was the CEO's spot. I sat opposite him, in the position of the second largest shareholder. Begin. Ethan's voice was a little hoarse. I stood up. Directors, we have convened this emergency board meeting today to address a serious matter. My voice was calm, but each word was crystal clear. Our CEO Ethan's personal secretary, Luna, has falsified all her academic credentials and resume. The conference room fell completely silent. I opened the folder and distributed the documents to the board members. This is her academic certificate. I said, her diploma from that prestigious school was bought online for 5,000 yuan. This is proof of her resume, her previous employment is all fabricated, she never worked at those companies. The directors flipped through the documents, their faces changing. There's more serious evidence. I continued, there are 2 million in her bank account from unknown sources. 2 million? A director frowned, where did she get that much money? I don't know. I said, but I will find out. Ethan's face grew paler and paler. Elena, you. He wanted to say something, but I cut him off. Ethan, as CEO, did you vet the secretary's background? Ethan was stunned. Someone who falsified their education and resume, how did they get into the company? My voice was cold. How did someone with 2 million in a single account become your personal secretary? Me. Ethan opened his mouth, unable to form another word. The conference room fell completely silent. Glancing around, she continued. I propose, first, dismiss Luna and cooperate with the police investigation. Second, Ethan, as CEO, bear responsibility for not thoroughly vetting your secretary's background and be suspended pending the investigation. Third, during this period, I, as the second largest shareholder, will temporarily assume the role of CEO. What? Ethan stood up. Elena, are you trying to push me out of the company? I looked at him, my gaze icy. Ethan, this is the boardroom, not home. Ethan's face went pale in an instant. He looked at me, as if wanting to say something, but in the end he didn't. He knew he had lost. I said, vote. 7 directors, besides Ethan and me, there were 5 independent directors. The first director raised his hand. I agree. The second director raised his hand, agree. The third director raised his hand, agree. The fourth director hesitated for a moment, glanced at Ethan, then at me, and raised his hand, agree. The fifth director sighed and raised his hand, agree. 5 votes in favor. The resolution passed. Ethan slumped into his chair, his face as pale as paper. He looked at me, an expression of disbelief in his eyes. Elena. Ethan, effective today, you're suspended. My voice was calm. Cooperate with the investigation, we'll deal with things once they're clarified. I stood up and walked to the chairman's seat. Starting today, I will serve as interim CEO. The conference room fell silent. No one spoke. I stood at the head of the table, looking out at X City. At last, I had reached this point. 8 years. I stood by Ethan as he climbed from nothing to billions, from a 20-square-meter rented room to a riverside villa. Now, it was time to take back everything that belonged to me. The board meeting was over. The board members left one after another, only Daniel and I remained in the conference room. Daniel said, "Well done. This is only the beginning." I looked at him. Keep tracing the 2 million to Luna. I need to know who transferred that money to her. Fine. Daniel nodded. I'll find out as soon as I can. I took a deep breath and turned to leave the conference room. Heading to the CEO's office. That was my office now. In the hallway, I ran into Ethan. Ethan stood at the end of the corridor, watching me. Elena. He called my name. I stopped in my tracks and looked at him. Are you satisfied? Ethan's voice was a little hoarse. Ethan, this isn't what I wanted. I said, you destroyed all of this yourself. Me, I destroyed it? Ethan gave a bitter laugh. Elena, you sent the photos straight to the work group, how am I supposed to live that down? Luna sent photos to provoke me. What do you think I should do? You can handle it privately. Handle it privately? I cut him off. Ethan, do you think handling it privately will help? She'll play the victim, manipulate public opinion, and make me look like the vicious wronged wife. Ethan was silent. Ethan, you're soft-hearted, you're kind, you think women should endure. My voice was cold. But you forgot, I'm not your appendage. I'm the co-founder of Xingshi Group, I own 35% of the shares, and I have the right to convene the board. Ethan looked at me, a complex emotion in his eyes. Elena, is there really no going back for us? I looked at him and was silent for a moment. Ethan, there's no going back for us. I said, from the moment you let Luna get close to you, there was no going back for us. I turned and walked toward the CEO's office. Ethan stood motionless, watching my silhouette fade at the end of the corridor. He knew he had lost everything. I walked into the CEO's office. The office was spacious, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the nightscape of X City. On the desk were photos of Ethan, and a picture of him with Luna. I put those photos away and slid them into the drawer. Then I sat down in the chair and opened my laptop. I still had a lot to do. I needed to trace Luna's 2 million, uncover the mastermind behind it, and deal with the divorce. I stared at the computer screen and began to work. The phone rang. It was Daniel. Elena. Daniel's voice sounded a little urgent. I've found something. Found what? Luna's 2 million, the transfer came from Huachuang Technology. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Huachuang Technology is Xingshi Group's greatest rival. Keep digging. I said, I want to know why Huachuang Technology bought Luna. Fine. After hanging up I stared at the night view outside the window. Things were far more complicated than I had imagined. Chapter 4. Huachuang Technology. Seeing that name, I frowned. Xingshi Group's biggest competitor, its main business was almost identical to Xingshi Group's. The two companies had been vying for market share, competing fiercely. Over the past 3 years, Huachuang Technology had poached several of Xingshi Group's major clients, causing a significant hit to the company's performance. If Huachuang Technology had bought off Luna, there was only one possibility. Corporate espionage. She picked up the phone and dialed Daniel's number. Daniel, I need you to look into something. What is it? 3 months ago, one of our core projects was preemptively released by Huachuang Technology. I said, I need to know whether Luna had access to the files for that project. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'll check right away. After I hung up, I walked to the window. I thought back to what happened 3 months ago. At that time Xingshi Group was developing a new intelligence system and had poured enormous manpower and resources into it. The R&D team worked overtime around the clock and spent 6 months completing it. Then, just 1 week before the product launch, Huachuang Technology beat us to market with a similar product and stole the opportunity. Ethan was furious. At the meeting he slammed the table and yelled. The technical director said it might have been a coincidence, but Ethan didn't believe it. He ordered the tech department to investigate, and they looked into it for a long time but came up with nothing. In the end we had no choice but to accept reality and readjust our product strategy. It wasn't a coincidence after all. Someone had leaked information. Half an hour later, Daniel called. Elena, I've found it. His voice was somewhat heavy. Luna did access that project's database. And not just one, she accessed the files of 3 core projects. 3? Yes. And she transmitted the data out. Daniel said, there are complete access logs and transfer records. She logged into the database with her own account, downloaded the files, then sent them via encrypted email to people at Huachuang Technology. All of the timestamps are late at night, when no one was in the office. My fingers tightened around the phone. Huachuang Technology used those secrets to rush 2 products to market. Daniel continued, the damage they've caused us is about 50 million. 50 million. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Luna wasn't just falsifying her educational background, she was a corporate spy. She took 2 million from Huachuang Technology, stole Xingshi Group's secrets, and caused the company a 50 million loss. And Ethan, as CEO, had somehow failed to notice at all. One more thing. Daniel's voice sounded a little hesitant. What? I've traced the puppet master behind Huachuang Technology. Who? Vivian. She froze. Vivian. That name, I knew it all too well. Back in college, Vivian confessed to Ethan and was rejected. She looked terrible and said one sentence, "You'll regret this." Years later, I heard that Vivian had married the CEO of Huachuang Technology. I thought that matter was behind us. But now it seemed Vivian had never let go. Vivian is the wife of the CEO of Huachuang Technology. Daniel said, she used Huachuang Technology's funds to bribe Luna, getting her close to Ethan to steal secrets. Why would she do that? I don't know. Daniel said, but I will keep investigating. After hanging up, I walked to the window. I thought of Vivian from college. Back then Vivian was beautiful, bright and flamboyant, the center of attention on campus. She liked Ethan and pursued him for a long time, sending flowers, giving gifts, waiting for him under the dormitory. But Ethan had never reciprocated. Later Ethan and I ended up together. In front of everyone, Vivian said one sentence, "Elena, you stole my man." I didn't say anything at the time, I just looked at her. I didn't feel like I had stolen anyone. Ethan was never Vivian's, he simply chose the person he liked. Later Vivian transferred schools and never appeared again. I thought it was over. But now I understand. Vivian never let go. She planned it meticulously for years, trying to destroy everything between Ethan and me. This isn't business competition. This is revenge. I picked up the phone and dialed Daniel's number. "Daniel, keep investigating Vivian," I said. "I want to know all of her plans." "Fine. And call the police," I said. "I'm taking Luna to court. I'll handle it right away." I hung up the phone and stared out at the night view. The lights of X City glittered, neon rivers of color flowing along the city's streets. I remember 8 years ago, Ethan and I walking hand in hand across the university campus. Back then we had nothing but each other. We went to class together, worked part-time together, and saved money together to start our business. Later we had a company, money, a villa, and a reputation. But we lost each other. And now I finally understood, behind it all, someone had been meticulously plotting. I clenched my fists. I was going to make Vivian pay. My phone rang. It was a WeChat message from Daniel. "Elena, Luna is preparing to flee. She bought a plane ticket tonight to Southeast Asia, boarding at 10 o'clock. Reading that message, the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. Trying to run? Not that easy. I dialed the police. "Hello, I want to report a crime. Luna, the former secretary of Xingshi Group, is suspected of corporate espionage and is preparing to flee. She will be boarding a flight at the airport tonight, heading to Southeast Asia. The boarding time is 10 p.m. Please intercept her at the airport. Tonight, Luna will pay. As for Vivian, I'll make Vivian know she picked the wrong person. Old scores from 8 years ago will be settled tonight." Chapter 5. Margaret saw the news on TV. She was sitting on the sofa at home, holding a cup of tea, idly staring at the screen. The news was reporting on Xingshi Group, saying that the former secretary Luna was suspected of industrial espionage, had accepted a 2 million bribe from Huachuang Technology, and leaked company secrets. Margaret froze. Industrial espionage? 2 million? That seemingly harmless little girl is a corporate spy? She set down her teacup, stood up, and walked over to the television. The news kept going on, saying Luna was preparing to flee and the police were pursuing her. Margaret's expression changed. She remembered what had happened a few days ago. She came to my apartment, accusing me of being ruthless, saying Luna was just an innocent secretary. She even said that men fool around as a matter of course and that I should tolerate it for the sake of the family. Now it seemed she was wrong. Luna was not an innocent secretary, she was a corporate spy, a mole planted by Huachuang Technology. The angrier Margaret became, the more furious she felt. She was going to find me and get to the bottom of what had happened. She grabbed her coat and rushed out of the house. The Xingshi Group building was in the city center. Margaret drove there and it took her half an hour. She parked her car in the underground garage, then headed for the elevators. At that moment, she saw someone. Luna. Luna was dragging a suitcase, her face flustered as she stepped out of the elevator and headed toward the parking lot exit. Margaret paused for a moment, then rushed forward. Luna. Luna stopped in her tracks, turned and saw Margaret, and her expression changed instantly. Luna's voice was a little tense. Aunt? what are you doing here? Why are you still here? Margaret demanded, the news says you're involved in corporate espionage. You've ruined my family. Luna's face changed. Auntie, please let me explain. Explain what? Margaret's voice climbed higher and higher. You took 2 million from Huachuang Technology, stole Xingshur's secrets, you got close to Ethan just to be a corporate spy? Luna looked at Margaret and suddenly laughed. The smile was completely different from the face she usually showed in public, carrying a cold, sinister edge. Yes, I was paid. Luna said, so what? Your Ethan chose to get close to me of his own free will, I didn't force him. Margaret trembled with rage. You bitch. Auntie, please don't speak like that. Luna's tone was very cold. Didn't you just say before that it's normal for men to fool around? How come you're scolding me now? Your son is soft-hearted and has no sense of boundaries, whose fault is that? Luna sneered, if you want to blame someone, blame him. He was duped by a woman and didn't even realize it. Margaret lunged forward, trying to grab Luna. Luna stepped back, reached out, and gave Margaret a shove. Margaret lost her footing and tumbled down the stairs. Her body struck the steps hard, letting out a pained scream. Then she lay on the ground, unable to move. Luna stood on the stairs, looking at Margaret with not a trace of guilt on her face. Auntie, it was your own carelessness. Luna said, I'm leaving now. She dragged her suitcase and hurried toward the parking lot exit. Margaret lay on the ground, wanting to shout, but no sound came out. The lower half of her body was numb, as if the strings had been cut. The parking lot was very quiet, no one passed by. Margaret lay on the cold concrete, tears streaming from the corners of her eyes. She finally understood that she had been wrong. She looks down on me, thinks I'm unworthy to be her daughter-in-law. She spoke up for Luna, insisting Luna was innocent. Now, she was pushed down the stairs by Luna, left permanently paralyzed from the waist down. This is her retribution. Meanwhile, at the airport, Luna dragged her suitcase and walked into the departure lounge. She had bought a ticket to Southeast Asia, the boarding time was 10 at night. As soon as she boarded the plane, she would be able to leave this country and never come back. She walked to the boarding gate, preparing to queue. Just then, several people appeared in front of her. Police in uniform. Luna? One officer asked. Luna's expression changed in an instant. You are suspected of industrial espionage and intentional injury. Please come with us. What? Luna's voice trembled. I didn't, you're mistaken. Your account, your chat logs, the tools you used, we have all the evidence. The officer said, also, we obtained the security footage of you pushing someone in Xingshur Group's underground parking lot. The elderly woman is paralyzed from the waist down, you're suspected of intentionally causing bodily harm. Luna went deathly pale. No. I didn't mean to. Come with us. 2 policemen stepped forward, put handcuffs on Luna, and led her away. Luna was still struggling as they took her away. I want to see a lawyer. I've been wronged. But no one believed her. People in the departure lounge were all staring at her, some taking photos, others whispering. Luna kept her head down, afraid to look at anyone. She knew she was finished. Half an hour later, I received a call from the police. Luna has been arrested. The officer said, she's suspected of corporate espionage and intentional injury, she faces more than 10 years in prison. Intentional injury? I frowned. Who did she hurt? An old woman. The officer said, in Xingshur Group's underground parking garage, she pushed the woman down the stairs. The old woman's lower body is permanently paralyzed. I froze. Madam. Xingshur Group underground parking. Margaret. I understand. I said, thank you. Margaret was pushed down the stairs by Luna and permanently paralyzed from the waist down. This is karmic retribution. Margaret looked down on me and defended Luna, and as a result she was pushed down the stairs by Luna. Luna bought people's loyalty and played the victim to whitewash herself, and as a result she was arrested and imprisoned. I closed my eyes. I did not want anyone to be hurt, not even Margaret. But this is karma. You reap what you sow. A WeChat message from Daniel. Elena, Luna has been arrested. Next, we need to take care of Vivian. Reading the message, the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. Vivian. The old score from 8 years ago, it's time to settle it. Chapter 6. Vivian saw the news in the office. She was sitting in the CEO's wife of Huachuan Technology's office, and the phone screen was reporting the news of Luna's arrest. Former Xingshi Group Secretary Luna was arrested by police at the airport on suspicion of industrial espionage and intentional injury. She allegedly accepted a 2 million bribe from Huachuan Technology, leaked company secrets, and pushed an elderly woman down the stairs, resulting in permanent paralysis of the lower body. Vivian's face went deathly pale in an instant. Luna was arrested. Her plan had been exposed. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the night view. She had spent 3 years setting this up, buying off Luna to get close to Ethan and steal Xingshi's secrets. She thought everything was under control. She hadn't expected Luna to be caught so quickly. She picked up her phone, intending to call Luna, but then put it down. Luna had already been arrested, calling would only leave a trail. She needed to destroy all the evidence. She opened her computer and began deleting the chat logs and transfer records with Luna. Just then, the office door opened. Her husband walked in. The CEO of Huachuan Technology, a man in his 40s, wearing a dark suit, expressionless. Vivian, he called. Vivian stood up, forcing calm. Honey. What are you doing here? I have something to ask you. Her husband's voice was very calm. About Luna. Vivian frowned. Luna? I don't know any Luna. Her husband said, You do. She's the corporate spy we planted inside Xingshi. Vivian's expression changed. Honey, what are you saying? I don't know what you're talking about. Vivian, I've already checked. Her husband's voice was cold. You transferred money from your account to Luna, a total of 2 million. You have chat records with her, directed her to get close to Ethan, and helped steal Xingshi Group's secrets. Vivian froze. Honey, listen to me. Let me explain. What is there left for you to explain? You used my company to do something illegal. How am I supposed to trust you? I did it for the company. Vivian's voice rose higher and higher. The secrets of Xingshi Group are useful to us. I'm not doing this for myself. You're doing it for yourself? You're doing it to get revenge on Ethan. Vivian fell silent. I looked into your past. In college you confessed to Ethan and were rejected, and you've held a grudge ever since. Years later, you married me, used Huachuan Technology's funds to buy off Luna, and tried to destroy everything Ethan and I have. Husband, I am your wife. You are my wife? You used my company to do this. Do you think you still deserve to be my wife? Vivian's face grew paler and paler. Effective immediately, you are relieved of all duties. All your positions at Huachuan Technology are terminated. All your assets are frozen. I will cooperate with the police investigation and provide all the evidence. Husband. Vivian rushed forward, trying to grab her husband's hand. You can't do this to me, I'm your wife. Her husband stepped back, evading her hand. Vivian, you reap what you sow. You tried to destroy others, and instead you destroyed yourself. He turned and walked toward the door. Husband. Vivian chased after him. You can't go. You can't leave me. Her husband didn't look back, he walked straight out of the office. The door closed. Vivian stood where she was, trembling all over. She sank to the floor, tears streaming from the corners of her eyes. She had spent 3 years plotting, trying to destroy everything Ethan and I had. In the end, it was herself she destroyed. She was removed from her position by her husband, her assets frozen, and she was subject to a police investigation. She had lost everything. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Vivian picked up the phone. Hello? Ms. Vivian, this is the police. A calm voice came from the other end of the line. We received an anonymous tip that you are suspected of bribing corporate spies, stealing trade secrets, intentional injury, and several other illegal acts. Please cooperate with the investigation. Vivian's phone slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. An anonymous tip. Who sent it? She thought of me. It must be me. Vivian sat on the ground, trembling all over. She knew it, she was finished. Meanwhile, Xingshi Group. I stood at the CEO office window, watching the nightscape of X City. Daniel called. Hello, Daniel? Elena, Vivian has been removed from all her positions. Her assets have been frozen, and the police are investigating her. Huachuang Technologies stock has plummeted, and a huge internal crisis has erupted. Good. There's one more piece of news. Daniel's voice was a little hesitant. Margaret is in the hospital, permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Ethan is at the hospital with her. I fell silent for a moment. I understand. Margaret is paralyzed. Vivian is ruined. Luna has been arrested. Everyone who hurt me has paid the price. Except Ethan. I picked up the phone and dialed Daniel's number. Daniel, help me prepare the divorce papers. Okay, I'll get ready right away. Also, tomorrow I'm going to the hospital. I want to see Ethan. Tomorrow, I will hand the divorce papers to Ethan. 8 years. It's time to end this. I turned and walked to the desk, beginning to prepare the documents for tomorrow. Chapter 7. Ethan sat in the hospital corridor, his hands covering his face. He didn't know how long he'd been sitting there, only that time passed agonizingly slowly. The corridor was quiet, broken only by the occasional nurse or patient passing by. In the ward, Margaret lay in bed, paralyzed from the waist down, her lower body forever numb. Ethan thought back to what had happened a few hours earlier. He received a call saying his mother had been pushed down the stairs in Xingshi Group's underground parking by Luna and was paralyzed from the waist down. He rushed to the hospital and saw his mother lying in the bed, her face pale, her eyes devoid of light. He asked the doctor, who said Margaret's spine was damaged and her lower body would never recover. Ethan stood by the bedside, looking at his mother, feeling an indescribable pain in his heart. It was his fault. If he hadn't let Luna get close to him, if he hadn't lost all sense of boundaries with Luna, if he hadn't been soft-hearted, Mother wouldn't have been pushed down the stairs. He thought of me. I stood by him as we rose from nothing to billions, stood with him from a 20-square-meter rented room to a Riverview villa. I gave him everything, and he betrayed me. He let Luna into his life, gave her the opening she needed. He didn't protect his wife, and he didn't protect his mother. He lost everything. The company, his wife, his mother's health. Ethan lifted his head and stared at the ceiling of the corridor. He remembered 8 years ago, when he and I held hands on the university campus. Back then they had nothing, only each other. They attended classes together, worked part-time together, and saved money to start a business together. Later they had a company, had money, had a villa, had fame. But they lost each other. Ethan closed his eyes, tears running down from the corners of his eyes. He finally understood that he had destroyed the woman who loved him most with his own hands. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Ethan opened his eyes and saw someone approaching. It was me. I was wearing a dark suit, my long hair tied back, no makeup on my face, but my presence was commanding. I held a folder in my hand, looking as if I had just come from the office. Ethan stood up. Elena. He called. I stopped in my tracks and looked at him. I came to the hospital to see Margaret. Thought I'd bring you something while I was here. What is this? I handed him the folder. Ethan took the folder and opened it. It was a divorce agreement. His face went pale in an instant. Elena. Ethan, sign it. We're done. Ethan looked at the agreement, his hand trembling. Elena, I was wrong. I really was. I know. But the damage is done, there's no going back. Elena, please give me one more chance. Ethan's voice grew louder. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, I will. He suddenly dropped to his knees. In the hospital corridor, he knelt before me. Elena, I was wrong. His voice trembled, I really was wrong. Please forgive me. I looked down at him, my face without a flicker of emotion. Ethan, why are you kneeling to me? My voice was cold, the one who should kneel is you. Elena. You are kneeling for your own weakness, your own soft heart, your own lack of boundaries. I said, you are kneeling for the marriage you destroyed with your own hands, for the mother's health you ruined with your own hands. Ethan looked up and stared at me. His eyes were red, tears welling at the corners. Elena, I love you. The one I love is you. The one you love is yourself. My voice was cold. You love your softness, your kindness, your lack of boundaries. You have never truly loved me. No, that's not true. If you loved me, you wouldn't let Luna get close to you. If you loved me, you wouldn't let me suffer this humiliation. If you loved me, you wouldn't make me bear all of this alone. Ethan couldn't make a sound. Ethan, we can't go back. From the moment you let Luna get close to you, there's no going back. I bent down and placed the divorce agreement in front of Ethan. Sign it. Ethan stared at the agreement, and finally the tears began to fall. Elena, don't. Ethan, the company, I won't let go. The marriage, I won't continue either. Elena. Ethan stood up and chased after me. Elena, please. I stopped, turned, and looked at him. Ethan, you still have your mother to care for. She's paralyzed and needs someone with her. You should be spending your time on her, not me. Ethan stood in the corridor, watching my silhouette vanish at the hospital room door. He lowered his head and looked at the divorce agreement in his hands. He knew he had lost everything. He knelt on the floor, tears streaming endlessly. He finally understood that he had destroyed, with his own hands, the woman who loved him most. And he could never go back. In the hospital room, I stood at Margaret's bedside. Margaret lay on the bed, her face pale, eyes half open. She saw me and tried to speak, but nothing would come out. I looked at Margaret, and there was no hatred in my heart. Margaret had looked down on me and spoken up for Luna, but in the end she was pushed down the stairs by Luna and left permanently paralyzed from the waist down. This is karma. I took a deep breath, turned, and walked out of the ward. In the corridor, Ethan was still kneeling on the floor, holding the divorce agreement in his hands. I passed by him without looking. I left the hospital, got into the car, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, the hospital lights grew farther and farther away. I looked ahead, the corners of my mouth lifting slightly. 8 years. It was finally over. Chapter 8. 1 month later. Luna was sentenced. Convicted of corporate espionage and intentional bodily harm, sentenced to 12 years in prison for both crimes. She wept in court, her tears streaking like pear blossoms, insisting she was innocent, insisting she had been forced into it. But no one believed her. Because the evidence was conclusive. She accepted a 2 million bribe from Huachuan Technology, leaked Xingshi Group's core secrets, causing the company a loss of 50 million. She pushed Margaret down the stairs, leaving the other woman permanently paralyzed from the waist down. When the judge announced the verdict, Luna's face went deathly pale. She knew she was going to spend 12 years in prison. Vivian was finished too. She had been removed from all positions at Huachuang Technology and all her assets frozen. Police investigations found she was suspected of buying corporate spies, stealing trade secrets, intentional injury, and multiple other illegal acts. Huachuang Technology's stock price plummeted, and a massive internal crisis erupted. Vivian's husband divorced her, and she lost everything. She sat in the empty mansion, staring at the night view outside, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. She had spent 3 years plotting, intending to destroy everything of Ethan's and mine. In the end, it was herself she destroyed. Margaret lay in the hospital, permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Ethan came to the hospital every day to care for her, feeding her, washing her, changing her clothes. He resigned as CEO of Xingshi Group and spent all his time on his mother. Margaret looked at her son, a complex emotion in her eyes. She remembered what she had done before. She looked down on me, defended Luna, made me swallow my pride. Now she had been pushed down the stairs by Luna, her lower body forever paralyzed. This was her retribution. Ethan stood by the hospital bed, looking at his mother, a kind of indescribable pain welling up inside him. He had lost everything. The company, my wife, my mother's health. He finally understood that he had personally destroyed the woman who loved him most. As for me, I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of Xingshi Group's CEO office, looking out at the nightscape of X City. In my hand I held a document, the officially signed divorce agreement. I was single again. And I had taken back everything that belonged to me. Under my leadership, Xingshi Group flourished. Employees looked at me with new respect, and the board members praised me without reservation. I had finally proven myself. I was not Ethan's accessory, not merely a co-founder of Xingshi Group, I was the master of Xingshi Group. Hello, Daniel? Elena, Luna's sentence is in 12 years. Daniel said, Vivian's assets have all been frozen, and the police are investigating her. Good, I said. There's one more thing. Daniel's voice was hesitant. Ethan is at the hospital with Margaret, he's resigned as CEO. I know, I said. Elena, you. Daniel, I'm fine. I said, 8 years. It's time to end it. I hung up and stared out the window. I remember Margaret's words, it's normal for men to play around, you should just endure it. I remember Luna's message with the photo, sis, Ethan drank too much, he's at my place tonight. I remember Vivian's threat of revenge, you'll regret this. I remember Ethan on his knees begging, Elena, I'm wrong, please forgive me. I thought of my decision, Ethan, we can't go back. 8 years. I spent 8 years accompanying a man from having nothing to amassing billions. Then in a single second, I ended it all. I glanced at the night view outside the window, a faint smile lifting the corner of my mouth. I finally understood a truth. True happiness never depends on others. It is held in your own hands. I turned and walked toward the desk. A new project proposal lay on the table, one I had designed myself. Xingshi Group is set to launch a new intelligence system next month, a system that will change the entire industry. I picked up the proposal and began to leaf through it. There is still much I must do. The company must grow, employees must be provided for, the future must be created. I am no longer that patient wife, no longer that betrayed woman. I am Elena, CEO of Xingshi Group. An independent, strong, confident woman. Outside the window, the lights of Jiang City still blazed brilliantly. Looking at those lights, a calmness unlike any before settles in my heart. 8 years of a relationship had ended. But my life was only just beginning. I picked up the phone and dialed Daniel's number. Daniel, arrange tomorrow's board meeting for me. All right, Elena. Also, contact the media. I want to release a statement. What statement? I looked out the window, the corners of my mouth lifting slightly. Xingshi Group enters a new era.